I walked that away from Penn State saying, oh, yeah, I feel kind of like I did at Ohio State a year ago. There's just not a lot of questions. They're going to be healthy. They got two backs. In Kate Tronnell and Nick Singleton that might be the top two rushers in the history of Penn State history by the end of the season. I get extra games and all that, but come on, folks. Like, they came in together, and that class with Drew Aller is pretty dynamic. Welcome back, or welcome to season 2 of Y Option. I am your host, Yogi Roth Jim Thornby on the other side. And today we are just nerding out. We're taking a breath. Training camp, been on the road, been seeing things. News has been popping. Quarterback's been being named. All the good things that happen in training camp. We're inching closer to game week. So we wanted to give you a really cool conversation around what has happened. What did we learn on the road? What did we learn about the news, Jim, that has happened in major college football? And as always, every one of these conversations are presented by our founding sponsor, 76, keeping you on the go, so you never miss a beat. Jim, I love going, but it is nice to sit in the chair. I feel like we haven't even talked this training camp because it has been planes, trains, and automobiles and a lot of flights on my end here. But it is great to see your face, man. How you doing?
Likewise, and I'm most interested to hear about these first trips for you for some of these Midwestern campuses. I know Iowa was the first time. I think Illinois was the first time. Where was the third?
In
There was another,
Wisconsin.
and Wisconsin. Yeah. So obviously you hit all the four West Coast Big Ten schools, and we'll jump into those. But I think that for me, I mean, just as someone who's been insulated on the West Coast for so long, like myself, and I'll speak more for myself than for you because you got to go to a lot more campuses last year. What it was like to hit those places for the first time.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a blast. Let me start with that. Big love to Big Ten Network for sending me to these places. You get into this new league, and you know it, Jim. Like you've been a West Coast guy for the majority, at least, of your college football life, I could argue, right? So you
Oh yeah.
knew, but even when you started Pac-12 Network, it was like, let me get to some of these schools that maybe I haven't spent time at, like in Pullman or wherever it may. If you weren't following the Jason Johnson-led Arizona Wildcats up there, shout out to the Paris Musketeers. Our season just ended. More on that later. But to that point, it's fun to get to these new places. Now, I'm going to write about it as well. So if you haven't yet, and it's been fun to get new subscribers here, go to yoption.com. I'm going to also give you kind of like who you need to know based on the teams that I saw in person at yoption.com. That will come as well later this week, over the weekend. Make sure you subscribe to that newsletter. But we're going to do it via verbal today. So this one's free for everybody. Okay. So to that point, I'll say this, like, I get realignment was painful and may still be painful for some people, right? We're seeing teams leave. We're seeing team leagues grow, and whenever a league grows, that means another league subtracts, right? We saw it with the new look Pac-12, and who knows if it'll ever end. To that point, I do think a blessing to all of this is for fans or for broadcasters, like, we get to go see new places. Like, at every place, of course, Midwest fans are stoked to come out to the Rose Bowl like Iowa did a year ago. Penn State will this season playing at UCLA. I was in State College a couple weeks ago to kick off the training camp tour. Same thing inversely. Like, I was just at SC yesterday. I think the big SC fans, like, they're interested. What is Illinois like? What's Nebraska like? I was on the staff when SC last went to Nebraska against Bill Callahan, and the slide run was first invented. Maybe we'll do something on social about that because Stanley Havili went crazy that night. You could run like a truck. You could drive a truck through the holes in the offensive line because of the concept that we stumbled into earlier that week in practice. So it was really cool. I'll say that. Dropping into Iowa and driving down the interstate there and pulling into campus. The first thing I did, I walked right to the stadium and I had to look up and see that children's hospital. And that stadium, I didn't know this, but it's kind of like underground, kind of like Michigan is in Ann Arbor. So I'm told like how loud it is, how raucous it is, just what the environment was like. So I walked there at night as the sun is setting. I'm going across the river and I'm just kind of leaning into what college football is. and the spirit of it. And then you look at the facility and the practice field. Like those are all things for the first time. And I'm, nudging the SIDs. Hey, can you give me a tour? I want to see what it's all about. Like, what's the recovery room like? What's the meeting room like? What are the walls like? Because every one of these facilities are telling a story. So that was exactly what it was like at Iowa. Wisconsin. I mean, I think Wisconsin. I grew up in Pennsylvania, as you know, Jim, and I played against an offensive lineman who went to Wisconsin, and he was a huge human being. And that to me was always what Wisconsin was like. Generally, large, move the line of scrimmage, gonna run the football. Remember when Paul Chryst was there because he left my beloved Pitt Panthers, had the success there. Remember Gary Anderson because he was there, led him to a Big Ten title game, then bounced out to Oregon State. So I had this idea of it, but never saw it. Indoor, they practice in the stadium. The stadium's fun. The campus. How often do we hear about Madison, right? Like we went out in Madison. Madison's a good time. Check, 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 check in the capital there. And then just to put a bow on it in Illinois, it was so fun to spend time with Bret Bielema. And head coaches are so busy, and there's nothing like a head coach saying, "Hey, come on and hang out with me for a little while." Invited us to the team meeting, invited us to sit in his office and tell stories, learn about his path and his past. I'm gonna be calling one of their games early on in the season, so I'm looking forward to that. It was just really cool, and then being around the ethos of what a team with huge expectations is like. So those three, I loved it. So now every team, I've been to every campus. I can say all 18. It took 2 years. Extremely grateful. The Big Ten Network sent me around to go do that, and felt like I finally, Jim, feel like I finally have a handle on the league, man. So it wasn't easy, but it was a lot of fun.
That's what I think. I mean, knowing how you prep for your games, and I know like what is going on your desk right now that people can't see, with
It's
all your
all of
depth
these,
charts,
like a
and
lot of
call
stuff
sheets,
here.
and everything like that. Like it takes. I mean, really, it takes years of institutional knowledge to kind of really understand all of that. Like it's not just show up and be like, okay, here's number 78, he does this. Here's number 84, he does that. All of that. So it does take so much because even still to this day, like I'm still, I don't want to say solely focused on the 12 schools that were once the Pac-12, but those are obviously take up a giant minds, giant space in my mind as far as college football goes. And even in this day and age, it's harder to keep track of that with the amount of roster turnover that there is every year. So when you're going into these places, because in the past when it was the Pac-12, you could kind of you didn't because that's not how you operate, but you could have just shown up at a game. You knew 70% of the players personally. You knew every coach, every assistant coach. Everybody telling you all this stuff. It's kind of reintegrating yourself into these new campuses and knowing all these things. So the amount of knowledge that you have to cram in there to be able to do your job well is really kind of understated on that level. So it's interesting how now that you've been able to be at all these places, it is a different level because you're not like when you can show up there, you are knowing like, oh, you're not wasting time in your brain of how do I get to here and how do I do this, whatever like that. It's like, okay, now let's just talk football.
Yeah, you're right, man. I mean, last year I started with just calling every SID, and I did the same thing this offseason in advance of media days. And it just felt like I walked off the set at media days with Ashley Adamson, and I turned to her and I was like, okay, I think I understand the league. Like but to your point, like I could call Utah UCLA and their home opener at 8 p.m. on Fox. Our friend Mark Helfrich is going to be doing it instead, but like I can call it right now because I know Morgan Scalley. I'd learn what the offense is, and away you go. And I think to your point, calling a game is one thing versus telling the story within a game, and they're two different things. Calling a game and telling you what happened after a play, no problem, but anticipating what will happen next, that's to me like where the craft is. Like when I look at Todd Blackledge or listen to a playoff game when Herbstreit's doing it, like they're in it, man. Like that's the standard in a lot of ways, and hoping to do that as well this fall. Feel good about it. So with that said, I want to give you a couple takeaways that I think fans from the schools that I got to see might enjoy. So let's just start with big picture. I think let's just start in the Big Ten. Ohio State, congratulations, Julian Sand, starting QB. Love it for him. Elite 11 alum. Lincoln Keenholz, what a competitive journey for him. I bet he'll have a role, though. That's just my gut. He's too tough. He's too physical. curious to see how that thing shakes out. We'll all find out in the opener as they have Texas a little over a week from today. But I look at them, Oregon and Penn State. Their rosters, Jim, just have a different competitive depth to them. They just do. They just have more bodies, right? Penn State, Jared DiNardo's always telling me, they 22 offensive and defensive linemen out there, yo. At SC, the numbers just aren't there yet in that regard. So what does that mean? Like in a 16-game season, I just think that they've got more margin for the things that happen in football, which is injuries, getting banged up, missing a drive, missing a play. I can go back to tune on for the SC fans, Minnesota USC. Late in the game, Minnesota's driving, and SC puts in 2 freshman D linemen, and Minnesota continues to run plays at them time after time after time after time. I look at Penn State and even Oregon for the sake of this conversation, just more depth. Deni Dennis Sutton, you know his name. He might be the most premier edge rusher in the league. He's in the conversation. Zane Durant, great name. Shout out to our 10-year-old Zane. But also, he's a monster. Reminds me a little bit of Cedric Ellis from way, way, way back in the day. And then I'll just go to Drew Aller. I'm a believer in him. I think it's easy to take shots at quarterbacks. And I get it. Praise and blame. They're all the same. Check out the book 5-Star QB, the quote from Chip Kelly that we often reference here. Jim, I think quarterbacks need to have scars. He's got them. He's had them. I get what his numbers are in their big games, quote unquote, Ohio State game or Michigan game or the playoff last year against Notre Dame. But I think the receivers have upgraded. Kyron Hudson, namely the former Trojan, he's going to be the most steady, productive player for them. He might not be a 4-3 guy, take the top off, but he's a third down conversion every single time.
Go here, go there, go anywhere with 76.
So we'll be there week 2 calling that game. I walked that away from Penn State saying, oh yeah, I feel kind of like I did at Ohio State a year ago. There's just not a lot of questions. They're going to be healthy. They got 2 backs. In Kate Tronell and Nick Singleton that might be the top 2 rushers in the history of Penn State history by the end of the season. I get extra games and all that, but come on, folks. Like, they came in together. And that class with Drew Aller is pretty dynamic.
And to your point, like with Ohio State last year, like that was Judkins and Henderson last year. Like, they're 2 of the best running backs in the country, and they're together. Yeah. Like, any other team in the country would kill to have one of those guys. Never mind to have both of them. And I think, to that point with Penn State, I think you could pretty clearly say that Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State are all 3 of the most talented teams in the country. But Penn State is the one that has the most continuity from last year. So I think that's going to be the most interesting thing. How do Oregon and Ohio State start the year? Because I think at the end of the year, they're both going to be fine. They're both obviously top 10 teams, no matter how you shake it out. But how do they get going? Obviously, Ohio State has the tough game with Texas. Oregon's schedule's not as tough on the front end, but they do have Penn State in week 5 for them. So, all those teams are going to win at least 10 games. Yeah. For specifically for the Ducks, for the West Coast audience, it's like they have at Penn State, they have at Washington, and they have at Iowa, which could be a tricky game. How many of those 3 games can they pick off? Because I think they're going to be probably the clear favorite in every other game they play. But those, I think, are going to be the 3 that are going to be the real challenge around that schedule, and how they manage those will be how they manage this season.
Okay, so let's go into a little topic that I try not to check a lot of social media, but I got alerted that something I said got a little bit of juice around Dante Moore. So let's go there, folks. I get it. Oregon hasn't named a starting quarterback. They didn't do what Cal did. They didn't do what Ohio State did. They didn't do whatever your favorite team has potentially done here in training camp or as training camp concludes. From what my eyes tell me, Dante Moore is a next level player and has a chance to be an extremely dominant player here. So we roll in there, Jim, and Ashley, it's just her and I and Jerry. So we're the trio here rolling around, and it's like, man, they lost everything. They're like, yep, they sure did. And then you look at the roster and you're like, but they might be better. Offensive line, Isaiah World at the left tackle. I mean, he's 6'8". I don't have his weight right in front of me. It's in one of these pieces of paper. 6'8", 303. Right? Here it is. Call sheet from practice, okay? This dude, him, Emmanuel Pregnon, Pancho Lalaulu, those three on the left side of that offensive line, look out, and they'll figure out the right side. I mean, they have, to me, 8-9 offensive linemen that are real ones. Kenyon Sadiq, Mackey frontrunner, I think is super fair to say. And
Yeah.
Will Stein, Broyles Award finalist, semifinalist. They're going to find ways to get him the rock time and time again in so many unique ways, out of the backfield, as an H-back, as a tight end, as a wide receiver. And I get it. Receiver core is probably the biggest question. DeCorian Moore, he's not Jeremiah Smith, but he'll be a freshman All-American, just like Jeremiah Smith was, if he can stay healthy. They've got 6 backs that all kind of look the same. Makai Hughes, potentially a lead one, Noah Whittingham. But Dante he did things with the ball, Jim, that I have not seen in a few years in the league. He could flick it differently than Caleb. He can spin it differently than Drew. I mean, dude, I'm telling you, it's a catchable ball. It turns over, but it's light. By that, like, as a receiver, sometimes you're like, that is a heavy ball, meaning like when it comes down, it's like Scud missile, and it's heavy. His is just like a feathery pillow in your hands, man. And he hits every location. He's experienced. He went there to sit and learn. We sat in the QB meeting. You should have seen Ashley and Jerry. They were like, dude, this is awesome. And it was.
Well, it's funny too, because this is not necessarily uncommon. I mean, I get it, because some of the other schools we'll talk about, like, if you haven't named a starter yet, do you have a guy? But this is not necessarily uncommon for Dan Lanning.
That's right.
Like,
at all.
With Bo, but he had Bo Nix and Ty Thompson, and he didn't name Bo until the very end. So it's like that turned out okay.
Yeah.
So
Dylan, he didn't name him the guy, even though he was at media days and, the face of the program riding around his van. Shout out to the NIL deal, or now the sponsorship deal he did in the NFL. But you're right. And I just flip to their defense. If you were going to, I'll give you a little spoiler. This will be in the newsletter. Everybody knows Mateo Uiagalelei. Get to know Tatum Tuioti. Number 44 in the program. He is going to be a monster. He and Amari Washington, those three up front. Barry Alexander was the best version of Barry Alexander. They're impressive. They're longer. They're more athletic in the back end. Penn State on the road. I don't know if they'll be able to get that one done. We'll talk about as we get closer to that. We'll have Tad Blackledge on, hopefully, to talk about that. He'll be calling that one on Big NBC that weekend. It'll be amazing. Saturday night football. It'll be bonkers. But if they lose that and say that's the game that keeps them out of the title game, I'm a believer now that that's not a bad thing. If Eugene hosts a playoff game, nobody who had a bye last year won. So we're getting cart far, far, far ahead of the horse here. But that's your Oregon Ducks for you.
Well, then let's spin it to those other 3 West Coast schools that you all got the chance to visit there on your Big Ten tour. Quarterback is not really a question at any one of those 3 schools, but plenty of other questions depending on which school you're talking about here. So what was your takeaway as you hit each of those other 3 campuses?
Yeah, it's pretty it's a storyline that's getting zero play. We said it on the show. I don't know if it caught any steam, but Nico Iamaleava at UCLA is the most successful by far of any of the starting quarterbacks on the West Coast.
Yeah.
You could argue he's the most successful other than Drew Aller, in the Big Ten. He's one of the most successful quarterbacks in America. He's one of the most talented quarterbacks in America. This is not like a guy who flew under the radar. He was an insanely huge recruit, was really their first NIL commit when he went to Tennessee. It was all news all day long about who he was and how he left. We talked to Tino Sinceri. Go watch this if you haven't. There's one thing you watch from our UCLA training camp show. He said, you know what? All I heard was everything you heard. So that's what I thought he might be too. And he came in and he's been the inverse of that. He is calling, texting, midnight, 1 a.m. He is pouring in. I got to sit in a QB meeting there as well, watching how guys take notes, watching the team gravitate towards him. And I only say that because I was there week 1 of training camp. I went there August 5th, I think. And watching him practice then, that was like his 5th day of practice ever within this system, to practice 17 or 18 or whatever it was when we were there earlier this week. I don't want to say a different player, but a more confident, more in command, like obviously, right? Like way more reps. So that to me is a net positive. Okay, sorry. To get to your questions, because the first question is going to be, where are they on the offensive line? And Jim, anybody could tell you, they walk out there, they look different. They look like a Big Ten team. They do. Their starting O-line, when I look at Julian Armella, transferred from Florida State at the right guard, and let alone the other transfers that are there, because there's still some competition going on there. I'm thinking to myself, well, they look the part. Like they really look the part. And then the defensive line, Gary Smith, he's another one who's going to be a monster. 2 years ago, he gets hurt, misses the end of that season, misses all of last season. He has a chance to. I watched him take on double teams, and he was moving the double team. Like it was amazing. So I say this, and this is a theme I think definitely for UCLA and for USC. They're starting 22 when they roll out there. You're not intimidated. You know, for UCLA last year, they didn't look the part everywhere. Like there were some deficiencies, especially up front. I think now with the scheme that I think is more suited for this personnel and for college football with Tino Sinceri leading it, I think they answer a lot of questions. I really do. I think they got 3 or 4 deep at running back. Cal fans, sorry, but the Jet looks good. Anthony Woods, who was once at Utah, before that Idaho State, he was the most impressive player I saw in practice at running back. They're going to run the ball, folks. I know Deshaun Foster said it a lot last year. They struggled there. The scheme has changed. They're going to run the ball. I think Nico has a chance to be a threat with his legs. And then defensively, they replace everybody, literally. So let me go to my beautiful UCLA trusty board here. Sorry for the mess here post-training camp tour. I reference Gary Smith, but I look at the D-line, man, and it just looks the part. Anthony Jones is a guy who I think will surprise some people at the defensive end position. Kaika Malloy's got this group playing, and what he said that was really cool, somewhere buried in all my stuff, here it is. He gave his defense this book, The Slight Edge, this offseason. Okay, we hear this at times. Dan Lanning's the first one to really talk about books. Jed Fish a little bit. Kaika Malloy bought it for the defense, and I don't want to say to his surprise, but to his pleasant surprise, the whole defense read it. This is not like a 20-page picture book, folks. This is like a big old book. And why do I say that? Every one of their wins last year, their 5 wins was a 1-score game. Some of their losses were 1-score losses. I called one of them a Minnesota game. And it was just a missed tackle late in the game. And I think this is a team, much like, let's just call it like everybody outside of those first 3 teams you referenced, at least in the Big Ten, they're all kind of the same to a degree. You know, so who has the slight edge? And with the improved quarterback play, I don't know. That's going to be the fun part. Is it Nebraska with Dylan Raiola? Is it Mark Gronowski at Iowa? We didn't talk about him yet, right? Is it the veteran at Illinois in Luke Altmaier? Is it Fernando Mania at Indiana? Is it Nico? Is it the defense? Like it was cool because I think this is like very symbolic of definitely UCLA, but I think you could argue 10 teams in that next echelon of teams there in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, can they capitalize? Because obviously UCLA last year, they started 1-5.
That's right.
Then they won 4 of the final 6 to kind of like,
and brutal schedule in the 1-5.
Yeah, gets it. And that was going to be my point this year. I don't really love their schedule this year either. I think it's a tough schedule this year. When I look at it, there's the game, a handful of games to stand. I'm like, okay, they got to win there. They got to win there. They got to win there. But other than that, like, not to say that they can't win these other games.
They got to start fast, bro.
They definitely got to start fast. And like a team that I think maybe in a neutral situation like Michigan State that I think they could beat, they have to travel to Michigan State the week after they play Penn State. So that game then in my mind becomes a whole lot more difficult than it would be just obviously in a neutral setting there. So I think the schedule, how they navigate that schedule this year is going to be interesting. 'Cause to your point, I think they are more talented than they were last year, but I don't think what they have in front of them is any easier.
What do you think about the Utah game? Like at the Rose Bowl, it's a late game. Like, are you of the ilk of like it's Utah? Like Ash and I were having that conversation.
I'm probably always of the ilk of it's Utah. Like,
but like
even after last year with being
last 2 years. I mean, it hasn't. I love the Utes. I feel like I'm an honorary Ute, but I'm trying to not look at it like this is just who they are. Like, you have to go play. You know,
But I think part of that was, and whatever, is almost like the ghost of Cam Rising those last 2 years
yeah,
of like the uncertainty. Was he going to play? Not going to play? And this is not a shot at Cam by any way, but this is just when you have a dude that is just that charismatic, that much of a leader, all that. When you're not sure if if he can play or not, or he's not going to play, it's hard to kind of fill in those pieces. I think they have a lot more of a solidified answer at quarterback this year. I think having him with his offensive coordinator, both coming over from New Mexico, I think is going to be great. It's going to be different than we've seen from Utah in a long time as far as offensively. And I think the Kyle kind of letting that be the case. I think in the past you would say that like maybe they would say like, oh, we need to do something different, but Kyle would be like, yeah, no, we're doing that because we're a team that has such a great defense. We're not going to screw it up on offense and let our defense just go out there and win games. I think this offense is going to be a little bit more dynamic than what we've seen, and that's going to be really fascinating to see the Utes. But again, I'm one that will never bet against anything that Kyle Whittingham is doing. I'll even if I get proved wrong every time, I'll be like, well, I'm going to ride with what Kyle Whittingham is doing.
yeah. I mean, the ghost of the Rose Bowl as well. Like, can they avenge just brutal, right, losses? Like, that Ohio State game is still, even in Columbus, they're like, that was an awesome game, man. Of course, because they won, but it was back and forth. And Dalton Kincaid with a touchdown, and Bryson, tell me the quarterback, the pig farmer.
Oh, Barnes.
Yeah. I mean, that was just, what a memory, right? And then the
Yeah.
next year, like, you're so excited, and it's just a challenging afternoon at the Rose Bowl. So can they avenge that? I think if I was calling it, the thing I'd be most curious about is you can watch Coach Beck's offense and Devin Dampier, what they did at their previous stop, but oftentimes, like, is it the same thing? Right? We saw that with Cam Ward when he came over with his head coach at the time, who's now the head coach at North Texas, I believe. When they came as kind of the package deal under Jake Dickert, it was like, okay, like they're going to run the same stuff, right? I'm so curious to watch Dampier take this next step up, because I think history, at least to me, would prove that it's not always the smoothest from one level as you jump. Now, there's plenty of cases where like it only takes a quarter, it takes a half, it takes a tough training camp. I think of Cam Ward, it took him about a year to really adjust. It took, I think, Vernon Adams, like, not that much time, right? When he made his jump. Think about that. Dakota Prukop struggled. Like, I'm just kind of giving you some West Coast names in the past. Max Brosmer for our Minnesota fans. I know we got a bunch out there. Sorry I didn't get to training camp. High on Drake Lindsey. Heard he had an incredible training camp, by the way. To that point, it took him a month, right? Like, remember that game against North Carolina in the opener? It was a Thursday night last year. Our good friend Brock Heward called that one. I remember watching it late in the game. Minnesota misses a field goal, but it's just hard. It's just harder. So how does he navigate against a really complex defense? Okay, I'd imagine he's going to get the ball out really quick. It's going to be some QB run game. But I that's what I'll be studying, Jim. Like, how close is it to what they did previously? I'd imagine pretty close, because I think Kyle Whittingham referenced, like, he's a coach on the field telling guys what to do. And you know Kyle well enough, to your point, he's going to let the OC cook. Like, do it. He let everybody who's called plays do it for him. Sometimes that meant short leash. Sometimes for Andy Ludwig, it meant as long as you want. So curious to see how that one shakes out, because I think it's a huge game. I think it's a huge game for the perception of both of these programs as well. Is Utah back, and is UCLA, have they taken the next step there? And like the whole Big 10, Pac-12, Big 12, like it's just going to be, storylines will write themselves that night at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, and I want to come back to the Utah part a little bit later, because I want to have you get through your West Coast tour here. But Kyle made some news in the last week. I think it might be as much trolling as anything else, but we'll come back to that. But let's talk about the other LA team there with USC and what you saw there, because again, I think this is a team that, what is it, just the second time since '99 and only the fifth time in the last 60 years that the Trojans are not in the AP top 25.
That's crazy to me. That, like, I just read that yesterday morning before going to practice, and it was like, I kind of, you knew they weren't a preseason top 25 team, but also like it didn't hit you. Like, how many times at Pac-12 Media Days was it just like, we knew, I'll say, I don't want to put it on you in case you get the vitriol, but I was not a believer that like SC would win that league, but they would be picked by the media to win the league. Like it was just almost like just because, right? And I get that. Like there's the power of certain brands. Michigan, Ohio, Michigan got a vote to win the Big Ten this year, right? Like they're more than likely going to start a true freshman, Bryce Underwood. That's going to be hard, folks. It's just going to be hard. But the brand carries itself. The SC brand often does that. Clearly didn't this year. And I think this has a chance to be, in 4 years, is it the best Lincoln Riley team top to bottom? You could argue. Coming out of practice yesterday, I'd argue. I mean, they hit lightning in a bottle. They had a soft schedule his first year. They won some tight games, right? They win at Oregon State. They win some close ones. They win the UCLA game, and away they go. And Caleb gets hurt in the Pac-12 title game, and away they go. But here's the takeaway. And the reason I bring up year one is that I think it's vital because I'm going to make a comp to year 4. Based on what my eyes said, and we asked Lincoln this in our show last night, there's a world where USC starts 5 offensive linemen and 0 came out of the transfer portal. 0 came out of the transfer portal. In the newsletter at yoption.com, I will give you a key stat around why that is key. So there's a little tease there. In addition to that, Jim, I say that because in year 2, with Caleb coming back, they patchworked it. It was portal central. The offensive line was average when you comp them to other Lincoln Riley offensive lines and run games. Last year was okay. They were navigating it. This year, when I'm watching them move and run and pull and all the things in the run game that USC likes to do, or Lincoln Riley loves to do, they look the part a little bit. On the defensive front, most importantly, I'm looking at my board now. Know the name Cameron Fountain. Cameron Fountain was their best player on the defensive front last year. Go turn on the A&M game. Just fly through it and just follow where he is on the tape. I did it the other day because I'm calling their opener. He was a monster. And then you add in Devin Tompkins, who might be the best defensive lineman. This is a guy who, check this out, Jim. He played football in 6th grade. Then he didn't play football again until his senior year of high school. And then he came to USC. He was a basketball player. What does that mean? That means he's got no bad habits. And talking to Danton Lynn yesterday, he's going to have a chance to be their most productive guy. He'll move all over that defensive line, a ton of versatility. And then you kind of look at some of the new bodies in Jakeem Stewart, 6'5", 290. Keyshawn Silver, 6'4", 330. I'm talking Jamal Jarrett, 6'5", 360. Like, they just look, again, much like UCLA, they look like a Big Ten team, especially on the defensive front. Then you added the linebackers and Eric Gentry, Kamari Ramsey in the back end. I know that Prophet Brown got injured, which they were counting on. They don't have room for injury, but when they trotted out that first 11 on defense specifically, I was like, okay, this looks the part. I mean, they were 1-5 last year in games decided by 3 points or less. That's a possession. And then to the obvious, in Jaden Maiava, which is your follow-up, because I know you well enough, he looked the most complete of Jaden Maiava. He looked the most confident. I talked to Lincoln about it, talked to him about it. Of like, what are you saying to yourself? We've talked about QBs all the time. Like, so much, it's such a sensitive position because every single rep, your whole life, you've been coached. Then you come and start at USC, and I'll say it again, sign at SC as a quarterback, you're a household name. You start and you're a Heisman candidate. That is Jaden Maiava, like it or not. I think they're going to get the best version of him. I watched him make a couple throws yesterday that were wow type of throws. I also think his command and what they're doing, much like Nico, he's got a threat with his legs as well. One of the best play callers in our college football lifetime. It's fair to say, of Lincoln Riley and the creativity he brings. Every quarterback who's ever been in that room would echo that. So I came out of yesterday saying, oh, I feel like pretty good about the Trojans. Now, going to Illinois against Gabe Akis, who is a D lineman, who's another rock star stud player, I don't know. Like, they've never been there. I think some of these new environments can shock people a little bit. But if SC can stay healthy, they're going to have a chance to make some noise. I think their schedule is set up as well. They go 5, bye, Michigan at home, at Notre Dame, not easy, bye, Final 4. I think it's set up for them to take the turn, to make the turn that all fans want. And I think the best case for them, or a case that they would want to make, is can they be that 4th slot in the playoff coming out of the Big Ten right now? I think if they did that this year, look out, because Chad Bowden recruiting, that thing is rolling.
And the one thing they got to do is they got to be better on the road.
No doubt. Every West Coast team does.
Yeah,
I mean,
but they
in
were
the
one.
order.
And, they were 1-4 on the road last year. I know you called a couple of those road games
Yep.
last year. The Minnesota one specifically in my mind right now. But I look at what
Maryland.
they have. The Maryland,
I mean,
right?
you
But I
can't.
look at what they have on the road this year. Purdue should be a win for them. But then they have Illinois, Notre Dame, Nebraska, Oregon. I mean, that is about as murderer's row uh, facing. Even though Notre Dame's not a Big Ten team, they're still in that realm. I mean, that's about as murderer's row of 4 road games as you can get there. So that's going to be a challenge there. How many of those can they pick off to become an 8-4 or a 9-3 type of team this year?
Yeah, you're spot on, man. All right, so let's get to UW real quick. Again, another one. They rolled out there, and I was like, oh, this finally looks pretty good. Jed, like this looks like a team that he envisions, and it makes sense. He and Deshaun Foster, remember, 2 of the latest hires a year ago, and I get it, it's a year ago, and everybody thinks you can flip rosters. Tell you what, you can't flip, Jim, is offensive lines and defensive lines.
Truth.
Jerry DiNardo, who I have just fallen in love with this guy. If check out him out on social media. He's an old All-American offensive lineman from Notre Dame. He's been the face of the Big Ten Network since its launch 19 years ago. But he always wears slides. Like he wears like flip-flops, basically, to practice. He's got these old lineman feet. So we decided to have some fun with him. And Dan Lanning kicked the party off, and he gifted him some slides. Hey, coach, here's some sweet Oregon slides. Then we go to UW, and here's some sweet Adidas slides from Jed Fish. And then we go down to UCLA, and they give him like a shoe, like a great slide shoe. It was like the greatest, one of the better shoes I've seen, a Jordan, of course.
Jordan brand,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And then Chad and Lincoln, of course, gift him here at the end here. So he's dialed. But I say all that he would reference like how many years it takes to build an O-line. And he's like, it could take up to double digits in terms of just a pipeline. Like it took Penn State, in his estimation, around a decade to build up a real true offensive line. And I say that of like, look at USC. Their 5 potential starting offensive linemen are all in their 3rd year. And some might be starting for the first time, like Tobias Raymond at the right tackle position. So for Jed, this offensive front, year 1, they had 7 guys in the spring. 7, okay, folks?
Yeah.
Year 2, in last spring, they had 16. Now they have 18. So Carver Willis at the left tackle, know the name. The Hatchet brothers, Landon and Garen Hatchet at the center and the right guard position. Drew Azzopardi at the right tackle. Like, they just look the part in that regard. And they might have the best back. I'm not afraid to say it, and there's a lot of talented ones. But I think Jonah Coleman might be the most talented back in the league, which would mean one of the most talented in the country. The way he can catch, the way he can pass pro, the way he can do in the return game. Saw him in the spring game, throw a pass. Like, they're going to find ways to keep feeding the rock. He's in the best shape of his life. And Denzel Boston physically, I mean, he was a part of he wasn't in the trio of the 2 Jalen's in Rome back at UW when they went to the Natty, but he was that 4th guy. He's the one guy. I think he's going to have 70 catches. So they look the part. Their question will be, much like SC and UCLA, the defensive line, can they stay healthy? Zach Durfee hasn't been healthy. Can he be the menace the staff needs him to be? Tai Uyunglele, who I know some of the transfers from Arizona are impressed because you got 2 corners in Tacario Davis and Ephesians Priceox that stand 6'4", that in my eyes will be press man all game long. And how many ways can Ryan Walters bring 6? So UW, again, with the schedule, like they can't lose to the Cougs when they go for the Apple Cup. Like, you're nodding right now. The margin
That's
for error,
exactly where
right?
I was going. Yeah. I look at those first 4 weeks: Colorado State, UC Davis, at Washington State, then Ohio State. Can they be 3-1 or better after those 4 weeks? Because I think that'll probably be the difference between them being a 7-win team and a 9-win team.
How about this to the scheduling gods? 5 opponents they play who are coming off of a bye in advance of playing them. Ohio State, thank you very much. Maryland, you got to go there. They're coming off a bye. Rutgers, who's coming on FS1. I want to say I don't know if that's a Friday night game, but they're coming off a bye. And then Illinois on the 25th of October, after you've gone to Michigan, and I think a night game is off a bye. And then Wisconsin's off a bye, but you have a bye as well. So scratch that one. But think of it. I mean, that's
not fun.
I know what I just said about the CFP and like, hey, if you lose, if you have the bye, like it's different in the regular season, folks, at least in my humble opinion. So that'll be a challenge Colorado State, don't sleep on them. Tim Plow, Shredville, UC Davis. I get it. UW's a better roster. All that. But you need to strap it up. And that, like, UW's not there yet where they're just going to roll it out and beat you. But I'm excited for them. I really am bullish. I just think the West Coast really improved. Oregon just continues to take next steps. But the 3 teams out here that are in the Big Ten, I think, are in that next echelon of teams. And then we'll see, to your point, going to Nebraska, going to Michigan, having Penn State come out west. Like, all of them have their tests, and I think all of those teams are so close, Jim. Like, they're which makes my job so much fun. Like last year, 31 games in the Big Ten were 1 score or less, and the quarterback play in the Big Ten has tremendously jumped. I think it's the best. I don't know the history of the entire Big Ten, but I've been following it for at least 20 years, top to bottom. It's not close, which gets us to some of the news. What has happened around college football, Jim? You teased Utah a few moments ago. It's positioning season here for a couple more days before we get to the first game of the season.
Yeah, well, it's funny because let's start with it. The Utah news is really some Big 12 news in the fact that they're going to have injury reports this year for conference games, and so maybe it's a little tongue in cheek, maybe it's not. You never know. But Kyle Whittingham has kind of said, well, maybe I won't do I won't do a depth chart then for those games. So you're playing those mind games there a little bit. So I get it in this day and age.
Do you like that?
I do. I like the idea of it. I like the idea
of not giving a depth chart, or the idea
of injury reports. I like the idea of injury reports. Now this is a sport that it's not the NFL. It's not where you have just 32 teams. That's very highly regulated by one league office, and you can fine and all the rest of this stuff. You have, obviously this is going league by league here, not as a college football as a whole, but it needs to be something that's either a college football as a whole, which I think would be too hard to really regulate, or you can't really do it effectively, because no one has the bandwidth to make sure that these schools are actually doing this accurately. You remember when Jim Harbaugh was at Michigan, they wouldn't do a depth chart ever. So it's like, I think, again, I like the idea of it because it's more information. I think it continually gets people more interested in the sport and in the specific games, because you're like, oh, this guy, oh, maybe he's not playing. Oh, I need to see that game because of this. Now, obviously, there's a whole gambling side of that thing that comes into that world when you start putting all that kind of information out there. But those guys are getting that information anyway, whether that's public to the world or not. Somehow, some way, Vegas always seems to find out the answers to these questions.
How? Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I think on one hand, like, the sport has gotten more and more professionalized with the payment of players. I think that not having a depth chart for the public on your game notes, you could either way. I think as a broadcaster, like, you're always going to get it anyway, because the SIDs are amazing and they know that you need to build out your boards. Like, I just built out 8 of them for my training camp tour. I will say this though, and I think this is where Jed Fish is brilliant. We were there, Jim, and your former head coach did what he did in Arizona. There was an awesome fan fest. Players were signing autographs, wide open final scrimmage of training camp. I get it. They didn't run like all their stuff, but why did he do it? He'd do it to not only drum up juice and excitement, and it was a beautiful day on the lake. Like, Ash and I went on a boat. It was such a cool moment. Coach Peterson, shout out to our guy, Coach Pete. It was like the perfect Seattle day and night. And if fans are going to be supporting the program and the players monetarily, whether it's increase in student tickets, an increase in traditional tickets, an ask to the collective, because it's not just rev share, folks. Like, we thought that would be it. Missed the boat on that one. It's rev share plus. There's rosters that are $35, $40 million, not just 20 and a half right now in major college football. So Jet's thing is like, get to know our guys. Take the helmet off. So I actually think, like, the little thing around the 2 deep, while small and might be insignificant on a lot of levels, which I agree with that. 2 things can be true. Like, it also helps your fans know who is who. Like if I'm just looking at like a random depth chart, okay? And if I said for two UW fan, Carver Willis, what's he look like at left tackle? I don't know, but I don't know what he's making, but let's just pretend a left tackle's worth 750 grand. Fair number, probably a little low. Don't you want to know him? So I think if we don't like start to open it up a little bit and make sure that, we take parts of the game that could be entertainment, and because of either desire to not do them or have chaos around a calendar, things that could be entertaining, Jim, are now becoming like another cloud in a cloudy
Right.
sky. Whether it's the portal, whether the calendar around the portal, whether it's NIL and the whether it's the schedule and 8 versus 9 conference games. Like, they're just things that you're like, I don't like college football anymore. I've heard that so many times. Airports, planes. And then you get into like, I don't know the players anymore. Like, you're an Arizona fan. Like, do you feel like you know your team right now?
No, because I'm not living there and not being able to be like, oh, I'm going to go and check this out. Or like obviously Justin Spears does a great job
Yep.
covering that team. And I read as much as his stuff as I can to kind of stay in the know. And I feel I know it. I mean, as compared to just the general fan, I feel like I do, but to my level of what I feel like I usually know the team and, who's playing what and everything, I'm not at the same level
Yeah.
that normally am.
I'd be
And
curious.
that's just modern college football, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I log into your 24/7 account pretty regularly. I'd be curious, like, what the stats would say. Maybe we bring on Adam Stanko or shoot him a text and ask, like, are fans who are subscribing to recruiting sites now saying, I want to go because of what's happening in recruiting, in high school recruiting? Do I want to go because of what's happening in the portal? Do I want to go for like my wife and your wife, they clown us regularly because we're just on the phone gossiping about college football. Do you just go because of the gossip? And
Right.
I think this guy's getting paid this. I think this guy's unhappy. I think they ran this in practice. Somebody told me the locker room said this. Like, I don't know anymore. Like, we used to subscribe to be like, who are they recruiting? How are they recruiting?
Right.
I think the whole thing has flipped, and I wonder if that will either grow a new fan base, alienate a fan base, grow because of gambling. Like, I understand all lenses, but I think two things can be true when it comes to these little nuanced decisions at the conference level. So net, I like injury reports. It helps out the broadcast crew. It makes it a little cleaner. So I hope if I was calling it, at least tell Helfrich who's playing and who's not. Okay, let him know.
Well, speaking of depth charts, we've had some news around the teams that are putting out some depth charts, or at least making some decisions on that from some of our old schools. There, you look at the two schools that went to the ACC in Cal. They bring in the true freshman Jaden Sagapolutele, which I gotta
Nice.
still get used to getting that name properly correct. He beat out the Ohio State transfer Devin Brown for the job there. Cal allowed 49 sacks last year, so they need to clean that up with a true freshman in the backfield. And the other thing they got to clean up is their 8 games and 8 points or less. They were 2-5 last year, 6-17 since 2021. So they need to be on the good side of some luck for once.
Who's
here.
the kicker? They need to. One
True.
note on that.
Well, the kid from Game Day last year, they need to bring him back.
Hey,
that was an electric moment.
Oh, I love it. And props to you for waking up early that day because you were all over that set. One quick note on that. First thing to watch when you're studying Jaden Sagapolutele, who can spin it lefty out of Hawaii, under the radar recruit, committed to Cal, signed at Oregon, ran onto the field of the Rose Bowl with Oregon, and then came on back to the Bears. Now he's the starter. Nick Rolovich, I'm so curious to watch. He is there. He is one of the masters at the run and shoot. They also have Brian Harsin. He is the play caller. He's more pro style of a system. So what is it? What are we going to see? I love the run and shoot, Jim. I played in the run and shoot. If he starts spinning the run and shoot, we will dive in. We'll give you a tutorial on that offense, but something to note for their early season game.
Yeah, and the other Bay Area team going with a familiar face to us, but maybe not as much to Cardinal fan, with the Oregon State transfer Ben Gulbranson getting named the starter over Elijah Brown, who was the freshman who was getting some starts last year when Ashton Daniels was hurt, who's since transferred on to Auburn. Gulbranson had 11 starts with the Beavs over his career there. Stanford obviously trying to turn things around after 4 straight 3-9 seasons. The biggest question probably for Gulbranson is who is he throwing to? Obviously, Iamaleava is in the NFL with Cam Ward and the Titans. I've read some good things about him possibly being wide receiver 2 for that team. And then Emmett Mosley transferred to Texas. So they're going to need to figure out who the weapons are because they need to score some points with that team. And it's been a rough 4 years for them.
Yeah, they got a week 0 game, right? They're going out to Hawaii this in a couple days here. That's the game I'm going to be glued to. I mean, Stanford has a chance to be one of the most, we've talked about this before, one of the most unique programs in the country. The offering that it can give students, student athletes, and, with Andrew Luck at the helm, there's just a really cool, vulnerable piece that just came out about him and his path, being back at Stanford. Now he's the face of that thing. Bengal Branson, I remember him when they beat the Ducks. Remember that? He's savvy. He's clearly experienced. I'm going to go ahead and assume this offense is more pro style than we think. Is going to be more Andrew Luck, Jim Harbaugh than Troy Taylor and what they did a year ago with a freshman out of Mater Dei making a couple starts in Brown, as you referenced. So I don't know what to make of them. It's such a unique season. It's kind of just like a hiatus pseudo year for Frank Reich, of course, their head coach. But they got to get a win, man. They got to create some buzz. Like, it can't be apathy up there this season because it's such a unique season with him at the helm as the head coach in Frank Reich. So I gotta hope they get that against Timmy Chang's company, who, props to Hawaii, they're building a new stadium. Good to that. Timmy Chang is a dear friend of us. Like, we spent time with him media days at Mountain West in Vegas. Looking forward to tuning into that.
Yeah, and then Branson's old team, with Oregon State. I haven't actually, as of recording this on a Wednesday morning, haven't seen it as a quote unquote official news. But everything I've seen all fall has been Malik Murphy QB1.
Oh yeah.
So I got to imagine that is going to be the deal, even if I haven't seen a quote unquote official tweet or depth chart to support that. But he's got Anthony Hankerson back at running back. He's got Trent Walker back at wide receiver. So they've got some good things going there. The thing with them and with Washington State, who we'll talk about here in just a sec, obviously, if you're talking about CFP aspirations for either one of these schools, which is, what everybody in the country wants, with what they've got, they're probably going to need to win 11 games to be in that conversation. Oregon State, they've got road games at Oregon and Texas Tech, plus another one at App State, which is not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination going all the way across there. So can they steal one of those? And then when you got Washington State, we're talking about depth chart. I think we probably all assumed, based on his performance in the bowl game, that Zevi Eckhouse was going to be the starter. Now, he very well might be, but Jimmy Rogers says he's not naming the starting quarterback before then. So maybe it's a little bit gamemanship. Maybe it's actually, from what I've read about their practices, it seems like maybe 3 or maybe even 4 guys are all kind of still in the mix for that. So it'll be interesting to them. But same thing with them on the schedule. They've got home against Washington, but they've got road games against Ole Miss and Virginia. So it'll be a challenge for both of those schools to kind of run through those schedules and to be able to stay in those conversations.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, fired up to listen to those broadcasts because Ryan and Nigel and Ted, they'll be one of the lead crews on the CW calling a lot of those games this fall. I'm so curious on the Washington State front. And I'll say this, from going around the tour that I just came off of, I go up to Mark Gronowski, starting quarterback at Iowa, say, "Hey, Jimmy Rogers, man, that's my guy." Like the reverence for him. And there's parts of his program across the country, man. Like, didn't know a lot about what he had done other than he tracked the playoffs. But you start to get into training camp, talk to coaches that have coached with him there or players that have played on his team. They rave about him. So I can't wait to watch, right? Like, it's not like he's inexperienced as a head coach. Like, he's been doing this for a few years now. He knows how to build a program. It's been really fun to even listen to their coaches' press conferences, the assistants throughout training camps, just to hear the enthusiasm in their voice. It seems like it's young, it's energetic. First thing that Gronowski said to me was, how cool is it that he brought everybody pretty much with him? And I would agree with that. I would agree with that, man. I know we talked about that when it happened. I think with where they sit in the Pac-12 now, that was the right move for Washington State. So how will it play out? Can they kick off the party with a couple wins? And can you imagine that stadium. Can you imagine that stadium when the rivalry game in the Apple Cup comes to town? I mean,
there's going to be, it's going to be pretty heightened, I think, is probably
well
the
said.
politically
Yeah, there you
correct
go.
way
The
to
PR comp Jim
go.
Thornby just showed up, folks.
But I think, to your point, I think that's not what makes it so hard to evaluate Washington State without actually seeing them play games. They have so many new guys that, like, you're kind of like, oh, whatever. But a lot of that are players that they brought with them from South Dakota State, or guys that they had been recruiting. So there is a cohesion, just not a cohesion that you're used to them being in Pullman in that sense.
Yeah, we started asking this question 2 years ago. I remember asking Ryan Day, Dan Lanning, Lincoln Riley. I think I would ask Coach Rogers this too if I was doing their games of how do you navigate the financial chemistry of your locker room. I'd assume Zevi is a bigger get. So I just think that that's another layer that, like, no coach thought 10, 15, 20 years ago they were going to have to navigate that in college football. Right?
Right.
But is that a thing? Is it not? Which comes down to, like, how you communicate with the team, and everything I've gleaned about Jimmy Rogers, that he's really elite at that. He's direct, but he's compassionate. He's thoughtful with a high level of emotional intelligence. So I'd be curious about that if he's not the guy, because I think we live in this world now where you can not name your starter, but I also can go to, like, On3's financial projections and be like, okay, he makes 2.1. Malik Murphy's going to be the starting quarterback, folks, at Oregon State. I just think that's the world that we're kind of in at that position, which is hard when you take over a program or guys play really well and you've got competition at the most critical position in all of sports. So we'll see how that one shakes out when they kick it off.
And that's a good segue to what my last note here is with Colorado. They have still not named their quarterback.
Oh.
And you talk about a school that obviously has two quarterbacks of name value, financial value, to get both of them to come there with Caden Salter and Julian Lewis. It's interesting. We've seen now one member of that Elite 11 class with Saka Pulatele named the starter at Cal. Could we see Julian Lewis, who should still be a senior in high school right now?
Yeah, that's JT Daniels. That's what he was.
Yeah, as the starter at Colorado. I don't know if he'll beat him out, but the fact that they've gone this far, and again, this is as of Wednesday morning, in case the news breaks afterwards, they have not yet named the starter at the quarterback position. And there was a story of Brian Howell from our friend there who covers the Buffs. I believe it was his story. Had a story out there with all the wide receivers really talking up JuJu. So maybe that's part of it. Maybe that's not. But it seems like there is an excitement level around him.
Yeah, the dynamics are amazing as a head coach. I mean, think about it. You're trying to keep it holistically healthy. Like, I think of Ohio State. Like, they weren't saying anything. Kind of competition. They named Julian Sayin, and then this morning on Wednesday, I see a tweet that's like, 10 days out from Sayin time, like, or 10 days out from the game, I'm just saying, which was like a phrase where we coined it at Elite 11, like, I'm just saying, because he just kept spinning the ball in the ball pro day workout with 20, 30 throws that we do every year in the summer. So, like, everything can shift the minute you make that decision, and the guy who doesn't win it feels it too. They see it too. So, like, again, like, you got to move forward as a program, and now more than ever understand that there's the other side of it, and now, like, the fall is so much further than what it used to be. So we look at Caden Salter. He came there to be the starting quarterback.
Yep.
When he committed, was JuJu even there? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't remember the exact.
It was close. They were all within like a couple of weeks span there. So obviously those conversations had to have been being had at that time.
For sure. And if you're a transfer quarterback, and on my last year, I'm saying, I'm going to Colorado. You're bringing in a 17-year-old. I'll train him. I just started for a couple of years. I led a team to a Fiesta Bowl. Like, let's ride. But
I'm sure that's what Devin Brown was thinking too.
Yeah. So I'll just say this: from being at Colorado in the spring and seeing JuJu, he can just spin it differently. Like I referenced with Dante Moore, like, there's certain guys that just have different arm talent. I'd say the same about Drew Aller. Like, it's just, it's beautiful to watch. JuJu is that way. It is so natural. So if he can do all the other things, which are so much harder than just throwing the football, we'll see. Can they run the football? Can they pass protect? They couldn't protect Shedeur. We know that. How do they do that? So anyway, all right, this was great because it was going to be like, yeah, let's do 20 minutes. And here we did an hour and some change, whatever it ended up becoming. Thank you for your support. Jim, this was fun. I love this side of it. As the season progresses, you will get an episode a week. We'll also give you some bonus things. We'll give you some Elite 11 guys, Texas fans, Diabell coming your way. Sat down with a bunch of those quarterbacks over the summer. I think you'll love those really bespoke conversations. We'll also make sure that the process series, we got Chris Fowler coming out next week, and wait till you hear who the guest after him is. And trust me, you're going to want to listen to that. Rhett Lewis has been working away, prepping for those interviews. That's right, Jim. That's right. And then Jim and I will be here with the Afterglow. So we'll make sure we still tap into what college football is. The cadence will not be twice a week because we both need to sleep this year, but once a week, it'll be good. It'll be in your inbox. You get a newsletter once a week, and here we go from the road. I'll be typing away, flying back from Happy Valley week 2, and away we go all season long. So Jim, thank you, my man. Appreciate the time. 76, thank you. Keeping us go, go, go. And they are the founding sponsor of this show every time we have a conversation. Thank you, 76, keeping everybody who's watching this in the know as you are on the go, 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 so you never miss a beat. All right, that's Jim. I'm Yogi. Go to yoption.com. Lots of love. Stay safe. I'm going to take a day off, Jim, because then it is on with week 0 games. There we go.